The price of love. I never imagined the day would come when love would have a price tag. But there it was. $200. That's what my daughter-in-law demanded. Not for groceries. Not for bills. Not for an emergency. But to let me see my own grandchildren. Before I tell you what happened next, and why the invoice I sent her changed everything, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Because these stories aren't just entertainment. They're lessons about family, boundaries, and quiet justice that always finds its way back. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 61 years old, widowed, retired school librarian, and until recently, I believed family was sacred, something no amount of money could ever touch. My son, Michael, is my only child. I raised him alone after his father passed away unexpectedly. When Michael was just 12, I worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, and learned how to stretch a dollar until it screamed. Every sacrifice I made gladly, because I believed one day love would come back to me in ways money never could. Michael grew up kind, gentle, thoughtful, or so I thought. He married Rachel 7 years ago. At first, she was charming, polite smiles, warm hugs, constant compliments about my baking and my stories. When their first child was born, then the second, I was over the moon. Those kids became my world. Saturday library visits, homemade pancakes, birthday cards with handwritten notes. I never missed a milestone. Until suddenly, I did. It started slowly. Texts unanswered. Visits postponed. Calls returned days later, if at all. Rachel always had a reason. They are busy. They are tired. They need routine. Then one evening, after weeks of silence, I finally gathered the courage to ask directly, "Can I come see the kids this weekend?" There was a pause, a long one. Then her reply came, not as a phone call, not even as a voice message, but as a cold, typed text. "Sure, but I'll need $200 first." I stared at my phone, certain I had misunderstood. So I asked the only question that made sense. "For what?" Her response came instantly. "Gas, time, and emotional labor. If you want access, you need to contribute." Access to my grandchildren. My hand shook as I read it again and again. I felt something crack inside me, not anger at first, but disbelief. A quiet, hollow realization that the rules had changed. And no one bothered to tell me. I called Michael. No answer. I texted, "Is this a joke?" No response. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at old photos taped to my fridge, tiny hands holding mine, smiling faces with missing teeth, and I understood something painful. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd pay. And for a moment, I considered it. Because when you love someone, you tell yourself dignity can wait. But that night, something else woke up inside me. Not rage. Not revenge. Resolve. If they wanted to put a price on family, then they were about to learn what accountability looks like. Itemized, calculated, and impossible to ignore. And that's when I opened my laptop. End of part 1. In part 2, I'll show you the message I sent back and the moment Rachel realized she had crossed a line she couldn't erase. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Part 2, the invoice. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally awake. For years, I had told myself that staying quiet was the same as staying kind. That swallowing my feelings was the price of keeping the peace. That being the easy one made me lovable. But staring at my laptop screen in the dim kitchen light, I realized something uncomfortable. Silence had taught them they could charge me for love. And that was on me. I opened a blank document. At first, I just stared at it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure where to begin. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was doing something far scarier. I was drawing a boundary. I typed a title, Invoice, Outstanding Balance. Seeing the words on the screen made my heart pound. It felt ridiculous and powerful at the same time. I began listing items, not imagined ones, not exaggerated ones, but facts, real moments, real sacrifices, real costs. Itemized statement. Her emergency childcare, 2016 to 2020. Countless weekends watching the kids so Michael and Rachel could have a break. Value, $0 charged, $12,400 saved. A preschool tuition assistance, 2018. When they were short 1 month and I quietly covered it. Value, $1,200. A medical coparies and prescriptions for the kids, because insurance hadn't kicked in yet. Value, $860. A birthday parties hosted at my home. Food, decorations, gifts. Value, $3,100. Her emotional support, unpaid. Late night calls, crying fits, marriage complaints, parenting advice. Value, priceless, but conservatively estimated at $5,000. I paused. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from recognition. I had never seen my own generosity laid out like this before. It was sobering, almost embarrassing, not because I gave too much, but because I never asked for respect in return. I scrolled to the bottom and typed, total balance due, $22,560. Discount applied. Family courtesy $22,360. Amount due, $200. Then I added one final line. Payment requested to continue services. Thank you for understanding. I stared at the screen for a long time. This wasn't about money. This was about mirrors. I saved the file as a PDF. Then I attached it to a message. Rachel responded faster than I expected. Too fast. What is this supposed to be? No greeting. No confusion. Just irritation. I replied calmly. An invoice. Since access to family now has a fee. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then came the explosion. This is manipulative. You're being dramatic. You're trying to guilt me. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I didn't apologize. No, I typed. I'm showing you what it looks like when love becomes transactional. There was silence. Minutes passed. Then Michael finally called. His voice was tense. Defensive. Mom, why are you doing this? I asked him a simple question. Did you know she asked me for $200 to see your children? He hesitated. That pause told me everything. She didn't mean it like that, he said. She just thinks you should contribute more. I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it hurt too much not to. I've been contributing my whole life, I said. You just never noticed because I didn't send invoices. He sighed. You're blowing this out of proportion. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I realized I didn't need them to understand. I just needed them to stop disrespecting me. So I said the hardest thing I've ever said to my son. Until this is resolved, I won't be paying to be a grandmother. There was silence on the line. Then Rachel's voice in the background, sharp, furious. You're punishing the kids. No, I said evenly. I'm teaching adults how boundaries work. I hung up before either of them could respond. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, because I knew what they didn't yet realize. I wasn't asking for access anymore. I was withdrawing my participation, and that was about to cost them far more than $200. End of part 2. In part 3, the power dynamic flips, and Rachel realizes control works both ways. Let me know when you're ready for part 3. Part 3. When silence became expensive. The next morning, my phone was quiet. Too quiet. No photos of the kids. No casual updates. No, just checking in messages that pretended everything was fine. They were waiting for me to break. I didn't. Instead, I made coffee, opened the curtains, and sat at the kitchen table like someone who had finally reclaimed her space. For the first time in years, my day wasn't planned around their needs. That's when the second message arrived. Not from Michael. From Rachel. I hope you're happy. I read it twice. Then a longer one followed. The kids keep asking why you didn't come this weekend. I don't know what to tell them. You've really hurt them. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. This was the part that used to work. Guilt wrapped in concern. Blame disguised as heartbreak. But something had changed in me. I typed slowly. Please don't use the children to negotiate with me. That's not fair to them, or to me. Her reply came instantly. You're unbelievable. I put the phone down. For the rest of the day, I did something radical. I lived my life. I went for a walk. I visited a friend I'd been postponing for years. I laughed, really laughed, without checking my phone. And yet, beneath it all, I knew something was building. Because people who benefit from your silence don't react calmly. When you find your voice. That evening, Michael showed up at my door, unannounced. I saw his car through the window and felt a familiar instinct rise. Brace yourself. Fix this. Smooth things over. I ignored it. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted. Older somehow. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside. He didn't sit right away. He paced the living room, rubbing his forehead like he used to when he was a teenager who'd messed up. Rachel's really upset, he said finally. I nodded. I can imagine. She thinks you're punishing her. I met his eyes. No, I'm refusing to be punished. That stopped him. She says you're making everything about money. I gestured toward the chair. Sit down. He did. Michael, I said gently, when she asked me for $200, did you think that was reasonable? He hesitated. That pause again. I didn't think it was serious. It was serious enough to say out loud, I replied, and serious enough to hurt. He sighed. She feels like you don't respect her boundaries. I almost smiled. Did she respect mine when she put a price on my relationship with my grandchildren? He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that cracked the room open. She's worried you'll cut us off. I leaned back. Cut you off from what? He looked away. That told me everything. Not just childcare, not just help, but reliability, unquestioned support, a safety net they never had to acknowledge. I'm not cutting you off, I said calmly. I'm stepping back until I'm treated with basic dignity. He stood abruptly. So what? This is it. You're just done. I stood too. No, I said. This is me finally starting. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Maybe he didn't. Before he left, he said one last thing. You know she won't back down. I nodded. I know, I said. That's why this has to happen. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Rachel posted. Not directly about me, but not subtle either. A long social media post about toxic family members. Emotional manipulation and protecting your children from negativity. Friends commented. Strangers praised her strength. Someone even wrote, "You're better off without that kind of energy." I read it all. Then I did something I'd never done before. Nothing. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. Because I'd finally learned a truth I wish I'd known years earlier. People who need control will always rewrite the story when they lose it. And I wasn't going to argue with a narrative that would collapse on its own. That night, I received a message from an unexpected number. Michael's sister. I saw the post. I just wanted you to know. I always wondered how much you gave. I'm sorry it took this for me to see it. I closed my eyes. That one message mattered more than 100 apologies, because it meant the truth was already spreading, quietly, naturally, without my help. And Rachel. She had no idea yet. But the bill I sent wasn't the real cost. The real cost was coming. End of part 3. In part 4, Rachel's control starts to unravel, and the consequences hit closer to home than she ever expected. Part 4, when control starts to crack. By the end of the week, the silence was gone. My phone buzzed constantly, but not with apologies. With pressure. Rachel didn't contact me directly again. Instead, she changed tactics. Suddenly, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were checking in. Hey, just wanted to see how you're doing. I heard there's some family tension. Maybe everyone just needs to cool off. I knew what this was. When control fails privately, people seek allies publicly. And Rachel was very good at that game. She painted herself as the exhausted mother protecting her children. I was the stubborn, outdated grandmother who couldn't accept boundaries. Funny thing about boundaries, they're never mentioned until someone enforces their own. I didn't respond to the messages. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. Because I had learned something critical over the years. Explanations are invitations to argue. And I was done arguing. Then came the email. From Michael. Subject line, "We need to resolve this." I opened it slowly. Mom, this situation is affecting the kids more than you realize. Rachel feels attacked. I feel stuck in the middle. Can we just put the money issue aside and move forward? I read it twice, then a third time. He didn't deny what she did. He didn't say it was wrong. He just wanted it gone. Swept under the rug. Like everything else. I typed my reply carefully. Michael, this isn't about money. It's about respect. And respect doesn't come back until accountability does. I paused, then added one more line. I'm here when that happens. I sent it. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me the most. The following Saturday, I ran into Rachel by accident. At the grocery store, she stood in the frozen food aisle, holding a box of chicken nuggets, her phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, she froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she ended the call and turned fully toward me. Well, she said coldly, this is awkward. Only if you want it to be, I replied. She scoffed. I didn't expect you to show your face. I looked at her calmly. This is my neighborhood too. Her jaw tightened. I hope you realize what you're doing, she said. The kids don't understand why you disappeared. I didn't disappear, I said quietly. I was pushed. Her eyes flashed. By refusing to pay. No, I said. By being treated like an ATM instead of family. She laughed sharply. You're being dramatic. That word again. I leaned closer, not threatening, just firm. You charged me to see my grandchildren, I said. You put a price on love. And now you're angry that I didn't pay it. People nearby were starting to glance our way. Good. Part 5. The moment she overplayed her hand. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the envelope. It was sitting in my mailbox, thicker than usual, official looking. My name typed neatly on the front. No return address. I stood there for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a legal notice. Not from a court, but from a lawyer. Rachel's lawyer. My hands went cold as I read the words. This letter serves as a formal request to cease any actions that may be considered emotional, interference with minor children. I had to sit down. She was accusing me of emotional manipulation, of pressuring the children, of creating instability, of refusing to cooperate unless financial demands were met. The irony almost knocked the breath out of me. She had charged me to see my grandchildren, and now she was claiming I was the problem. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I started laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was desperate. Rachel had gone too far. I called Michael immediately. He answered on the second ring. Did you know about this? I asked quietly. Silence. That pause again. Michael, I said, my voice steady but firm. Did you approve a lawyer sending me this? He sounded exhausted. She thought it was the best way to protect everyone. Protect. Another word twisted beyond recognition. So, I said slowly, instead of talking to me, your wife decided to threaten me. It's not a threat, he said weakly. It's just boundaries. I closed my eyes. No, I replied. This is intimidation. He didn't argue. That told me everything. That night, I did something I had avoided for years. I pulled out a folder from the back of my filing cabinet. Inside were receipts, bank transfers, text messages, photos, dates. Every time I helped them. Every time I stepped in quietly. Every time I paid for something they forgot. I hadn't kept them out of spite. I kept them because I was a librarian. I kept records. I also pulled out something else. A notebook. On the first page, I wrote, Timeline of contact restriction. Dates Rachel cancelled visits. messages demanding payment, screenshots of her exact words. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer, a calm woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She read everything without interruption. Then she looked up at me and said one sentence that changed everything. "You're not the one in danger here." I felt my chest loosen for the first time in weeks. 3 days later, Rachel received a response. Not emotional, not dramatic, legal. My lawyer outlined facts, documented evidence, and one very clear point: charging a grandparent money to see grandchildren and then accusing them of manipulation does not, especially when the grandmother has a history of consistent involvement and support. Rachel panicked. I knew because Michael called me that night, his voice shaking. "She didn't think you'd do this," he said. I was quiet. "She thought you'd back down," he added. I exhaled slowly. "So did you," I said. There was a long silence. Then, for the first time, my son said something I had waited years to hear. "I'm sorry, Mom." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. The next day, Rachel called me herself. No lawyer. No buffer. Her voice was tight. "We need to talk," she said. I looked at the clock. Then out the window. "I agree," I replied. "But this time, we are not negotiating access to children like it's a transaction." Another pause. "What do you want?" she asked. I answered calmly. Respect. An apology. And no more money, ever, connected to my grandchildren. She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, her voice cracked. "I didn't think it would go this far." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Neither did I said. "But you kept pushing." That night, I received a message from my oldest grandchild. A simple voice note. "Grandma, Mom says you might come to my recital." Tears filled my eyes. "I'll be there," I whispered. And for the first time since this all began, I knew something for certain. Rachel had tried to control the wrong woman, and she had just learned the difference between kindness and weakness. End of Part 5. Air in Part 6, the final confrontation happens, and Rachel faces the consequences she never expected. Part 6. The apology that wasn't optional. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes. Neutral ground. Rachel arrived first. I could see her through the window, sitting stiffly, arms crossed, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. When I walked in, she stood up immediately. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded and sat across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of conversation around us felt distant, unreal, like the world had no idea. A quiet war was ending at a small round table near the window. Rachel cleared her throat. "I want to say, I'm sorry if things got out of hand." I looked at her steadily. "That's not an apology," I said gently. Her jaw tightened. I said I'm sorry. "You said you're sorry if," I replied. "That's different." She exhaled sharply, clearly irritated that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. "I was under a lot of stress," she said. 2 kids, work, expenses. It felt like everything was on me. "I understand stress," I said. "I lived it for decades." She looked away. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. But you did, I replied. And then you doubled down when I refused to be humiliated. That landed. Rachel's shoulders slumped slightly. I didn't think you'd push back, she admitted quietly. I leaned forward, not angrily, just honestly. That's the problem, I said. You thought my kindness meant I had no limits. She swallowed. I was wrong. There it was. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Michael arrived 10 minutes later. He looked between us, visibly nervous. We filled him in, calmly, fact by fact. No raised voices. No accusations. Just truth. When it was over, he sat back and rubbed his face. I didn't protect you, he said to me. I waited. I should have, he added. That mattered. Rachel spoke again, her voice shaking now. I crossed a line, she said. Charging you. That was wrong. And involving a lawyer was worse. I nodded. Yes, it was. I won't do it again, she said quickly. Ever. I studied her for a long moment. Good, I said. Because this is the boundary. I slid a single page across the table. Not a legal document. A simple list. A visits coordinated respectfully. And no money exchanged, ever. And no using the children as leverage. A direct communication, not manipulation. A mutual respect as a baseline, not a reward. Rachel read it slowly, then nodded. I agree, she said. Michael looked relieved. But I wasn't done. There's one more thing, I said. They both looked at me. I will be part of my grandchildren's lives, I continued. But I will not be the silent fixer anymore. I won't be the emergency fund, the last-minute solution, or the emotional dumping ground. Rachel opened her mouth, then closed it. Michael nodded. That's fair. I give because I want to, I said, not because I'm expected to. The following weekend, I attended the recital. I sat in the second row. When my granddaughter spotted me in the audience, her face lit up like the sun had come out just for her. She waved. I waved back. Rachel stood beside me during intermission. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I looked at her. This is what family looks like, I replied. Not in voices. She nodded. I'm still learning, she said. So am I answered. And for the first time, I believed we might actually be moving forward, not perfectly, not painlessly, but honestly. That night, back at home, I placed the old invoice, the one that started everything, into a folder. Then I labeled it. Boundaries. Established. I smiled. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can send someone is not a bill, but a line they can never cross again. End of Part 6. Air in Part 7. The long-term effects begin to show, and Rachel discovers that respect, once lost, has to be rebuilt slowly. Part 7. Trust is not a switch. Respect didn't return overnight. That was the first thing Rachel learned. In the weeks after the cafe meeting, things were polite, careful, almost too careful. Messages were short. Plans were confirmed twice. Conversations stayed on safe topics. School schedules, weather, grocery prices. No one argued. But no one relaxed either. And that, I realized, was the real consequence. When trust breaks, it doesn't come back because someone says sorry. It comes back only after time proves the apology wasn't convenient. It was permanent. Rachel stopped asking for help. At first, I thought it was progress. Then I realized it was fear. She didn't want to owe me anything. Not rides. Not babysitting. Not advice. She had learned, finally, that dependence without respect was dangerous. One afternoon, Michael mentioned it casually. "She won't even let me ask you to watch the kids," he said. "She says it's not fair to assume." I nodded. "That's actually healthy." He looked surprised. "I don't want her afraid of me," I added. "I want her accountable." There's a difference. The kids, however, were different. They bounced back the way only children can. They called me again. They asked when I'd visit. They told me about school projects and silly jokes. Love, with children, doesn't keep score. Adults do. One evening, Rachel called. Just me. No warning. No text beforehand. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "I don't need anything," she said quickly, as if afraid I'd think otherwise. "I just wanted to ask something." I waited. "How did you do it?" She asked. "Do what?" "Raise Michael alone," she said, without turning bitter. I smiled faintly. "Oh, I was bitter," I replied. "I just didn't let it make decisions for me." She was quiet for a moment. "I thought control meant safety," she admitted. "But all it did was isolate me." "That's what control always does," I said gently. She exhaled. "I don't want to be that person." "Then don't be," I replied. "But understand this. Change isn't proven by promises. It's proven by restraint." She whispered, "I know." At the next family gathering, something subtle happened. Rachel brought dessert. Homemade. She set it on the table and said, "Eleanor, I made this because you always used to." I looked at her. "Thank you," I said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. And sometimes, that's the first brick laid in rebuilding something broken. Later that night, after everyone left, Michael lingered. "You know," he said, "I didn't realize how much you carried until you stopped." I nodded. "That's common." "I'm trying to be better," he said. "I see that," I replied. "Just remember, being better isn't about fixing things when they break. It's about noticing before they do." He hugged me then. Not tightly. Respectfully. Before bed, I checked my phone. A message from Rachel. "Thank you for not humiliating me when you could have." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. I wanted respect, not revenge. She replied with a single word. Understood. I set the phone down. That night, I slept deeply, not because everything was perfect, but because it was honest. And honesty, once it arrives, has a way of changing how everyone behaves, even those who once thought love had a price. End of Part 7. In Part 8, years later, the full impact of this moment is revealed, and Eleanor realizes the true legacy she created. Part 8. The legacy she never planned. 5 years passed. Quietly. No dramatic announcements. No public apologies. No grand family speeches. Just time, doing what it does best when people finally choose to grow. I was 66 now. My hair had gone fully grey, and I no longer rushed through my mornings. Life felt slower, but steadier. I volunteered twice a week at the local library again, the same place I had worked for most of my life. Books still felt like old friends. My grandchildren were taller. Too tall. The youngest no longer fit in my lap. The oldest had opinions now, real ones, and wasn't afraid to share them. And Rachel. Rachel was different. Not perfect, but different. She no longer flinched when I spoke. She no longer guarded conversations like negotiations. She didn't assume I was there to fix things or fund them. Instead, she asked, "Would you like to come to the school play? Do you have time to visit this weekend? Can I get your advice on something?" Advice. Not money. Not obligation. Choice. That was the difference. One afternoon, I overheard something that stopped me cold. My granddaughter was talking to a friend in the backyard. "My grandma taught my mom how to be brave," she said casually. "She doesn't let people be mean to her." I turned away before she could see my tears. I had never told the children what happened. I didn't want them to carry adult wounds, but they had noticed anyway. Children always do. Michael had changed too. He listened more. He interrupted less. When disagreements happened, as they always do, he didn't hide behind silence. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the trees, he said something that felt like a full circle closing. "I used to think peace meant no conflict," he said. "Now I know it means fairness." I smiled. "That took me decades to learn," I replied. Rachel joined us a moment later, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed me one. Then, quietly, she said something I never expected to hear. "I tell people about you sometimes," she admitted. I raised an eyebrow. "What do you tell them?" She hesitated. "That you're the reason I understand boundaries now," she said. "That kindness doesn't mean silence." I nodded slowly. "That's a good lesson," I said. She smiled, softly, genuinely. Later that night, alone in my bedroom, I opened the old folder. The one labeled Boundaries, Established. Inside was the invoice, the legal letter, the notes I had written when my hands were shaking and my heart was broken. I looked at it one last time. Then I closed the folder, not because it no longer mattered, but because it had done its job. I placed it back in the drawer, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of growth. Some legacies are built with money, some with power. Mine was built with one decision: to stop paying for love. And in doing so, I taught everyone around me, including myself, what real respect looks like. End of Part 8. In Part 9, Eleanor faces an unexpected test, one that proves whether the change will truly last. Part 9. The test no one saw coming. I thought the hard part was over. I was wrong. Life has a way of testing boundaries when you least expect it, not with cruelty, but with urgency. It started with a phone call at 2:14 a.m. Michael's name lit up my screen. My heart dropped before I even answered. "Mom," he said, breathless, "we are at the hospital." I sat up instantly. What happened? "It's Rachel," he said. "She collapsed at work. They think it's exhaustion, maybe stress-related. She's awake, but scared." I didn't hesitate. "I'm coming," I said. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Rachel lay in a narrow bed, pale, 4 in her arm. eyes tired in a way I recognized too well. When she saw me, her face tightened, not with anger, not with guilt, with vulnerability. "I didn't want to call you," she said softly. I pulled a chair close and sat down. "I know," I replied. Michael stood awkwardly near the door, hands shoved into his pockets like a boy again. "The kids are asleep at home," he said. I didn't know who else to. "You did the right thing," I said calmly. Rachel swallowed. "I pushed myself too hard," she admitted. "I thought if I stayed in control, nothing would fall apart." I looked at her carefully. "And did it work?" She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "It just made me tired. And alone." That honesty mattered. More than any apology. The doctor explained it plainly. No long-term damage. No serious diagnosis. Just a warning. Slow down, or your body will force you to. As Rachel slept, Michael and I sat in the hallway. "I almost didn't call you," he confessed. Part of me was afraid it would feel like asking for help again. I nodded. "That fear is understandable." "But you came anyway," he said. "Yes," I replied, "because boundaries don't mean abandonment." He looked at me then, not as a son needing rescue, but as an adult learning balance. "That's the difference," he said quietly. Rachel was discharged the next afternoon. At home, she insisted on managing things herself, meals, schedules, everything, until she visibly swayed from exhaustion. I gently took the grocery bags from her hands. "Sit," I said. She hesitated. "I don't want to cross." "You're not," I interrupted. "Help offered is not help demanded." She sat a day, and for the first time, she let herself rest without fear of debt, emotional or financial. That evening, the kids gathered around the kitchen table, coloring quietly. My granddaughter looked up at Rachel. "Mom," she said, "Grandma helps because she wants to." "Right." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she said, "because she wants to." The child smiled and went back to her drawing, satisfied. Later, Rachel stood beside me at the sink. "I was scared you'd say no," she admitted. "I would have," I replied honestly, "if you'd expected it." She nodded. "I don't anymore." That was the test, and she passed it. As I drove home that night, I realized something profound. The real victory wasn't that Rachel had apologized. It wasn't that Michael had grown. It was that when crisis came, no one reached for control. They reached for trust. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the quiet car for a moment. Some boundaries are meant to protect you. Others are meant to teach people how to love you correctly. And that night, I knew mine had done both. End of Part 9. Air in Part 10, final part. Eleanor reflects on what it truly means to leave a legacy, and why the bill she sent was never about money at all. Part 10. The bill was never about money. Final part. I used to think legacy was something you left behind, something people talked about after you were gone. I was wrong. Legacy is what you teach people while you're still here, by how you allow yourself to be treated. Life returned to normal after Rachel's hospital scare. Not the old normal. A better one. Rachel learned how to rest without guilt. Michael learned how to speak up without hiding. And I learned that strength doesn't need to be loud to be permanent. The kids came over every Sunday again. No payments. No negotiations. No tension hanging in the air like unfinished business. Just laughter, noise, crumbs on the table. Love, as it was always meant to be. One afternoon, while helping my granddaughter with a school project, she asked a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma," she said, "why do grown-ups fight so much?" I thought for a moment. "Because sometimes," I said gently, "they forget that love isn't something you trade. It's something you choose." She nodded, satisfied with the answer. And in that moment, I realized something important. She would grow up knowing her worth, because she had watched me protect mine. A few weeks later, Rachel asked to speak to me alone. We sat on the porch, the same place where so many quiet conversations had happened over the years. "I want to thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not destroying us when you could have," she replied. "For teaching me without humiliating me." I smiled softly. "I didn't want revenge," I said. "I wanted change." She looked down at her hands. "I used to think kindness meant weakness," she admitted. "Now I know it means boundaries." I reached over and squeezed her hand once. "That's all I ever wanted you to understand." That night, after everyone left, I opened my desk drawer one last time. Inside was the old invoice, the one that had started everything. I looked at it carefully. Then I folded it and threw it away, because it had already served its purpose. I didn't send a bill to punish anyone. I sent it to remind myself and them that love without respect eventually becomes pain. And that family doesn't mean unlimited access. It means mutual care. Now, when I sit at the dinner table surrounded by my grandchildren, I don't feel like I earned my place there. I know I protected it. And that is the quiet victory no one talks about. Some people leave money behind. Some leave property. I leave something better. A family that knows love is free, but dignity is priceless. And that was worth far more than $200. The end.